Got dreams of being a professional podcaster, but have no idea what you're doing?
This is impossible.
That's about to change.
A new kind of school.
Welcome to the Pod School Podcast.
Hello there, welcome to the show. This is the second last episode of the year. Next week will be the last episode and Pod School will be going on a little break. And by Pod School, I mean me. So, of course, if you have just joined the show, my goodness, you got plenty of stuff to get through. You will be working hard over the time that this show is off. Make sure you head back to earlier episodes. There is heaps and heaps of content here. And, of course, heaps of content at my website, rachelcorbett.com.au as well. Today's episode is around launching with no following. I get quite a few emails around this because most people don't have a following, and that's totally fine. Interestingly, the thing about podcasting is that you really don't need a high profile to be a success. If you think about the majority of the shows in the top 10 or in the charts, most of them aren't of celebrities or aren't people that we know. They're people that have become a success through their podcasts. So you can absolutely, if you nail your idea, you can absolutely build your following from zero. It's totally fine if you don't have a following already, but you do really need to think about your idea. So if you are launching with no following, that's really the starting point for you, is making sure that you think really strategically about the idea that you're doing. You don't want to do a general podcast about stuff and things just because you want to talk about things, because that's just not going to get much traction. So think about what would really fly for an audience. What am I really passionate about? What is there an audience out there for? And think strategically about your content, because ideally you want to be doing a show that people are searching for rather than trying to force people to listen to a show that they don't really know or care about. So think about that. Obviously, starting from scratch promotion is essential. So you want to be cutting up your episodes in as many different ways as possible. You want it to have a show notes page that might be a blog post. You want audiograms where you can play little snippets of your episode. You want tiles for social media where you can have quotes from your episodes. You want behind the scenes images, whatever different ways that you can promote your show. You want to have as many varied and interesting, engaging ways that can get people's interest and make them think, oh, I might check this out. And the other thing you want to be doing is hashtagging the crap out of everything. If you've thought really carefully about your niche, then ideally you're going to be in a niche where people are searching, and you want to be hashtagging things on social media so that for people who are searching for the content in that niche but don't know who you are, then they can find your show. That is going to really open you up to people who may never have heard of you but are really interested in the content that you are serving up. So make sure you are promoting the crap out of it and making the most of those hashtags. You also want to make sure when it comes to social media that you are in all of the places that your audience are. So if you're doing something that you think your audience are probably more into visual mediums, make sure you're on Pinterest and Instagram, but don't be everywhere. You don't have to be on every single social media platform. You are much better off choosing a few or a couple to do really, really well that you think, yes, this is exactly where my audience is, rather than trying to do every single platform and kind of failing at them all because you're not spending enough time thinking about them strategically. So make sure that you are on the platforms that your audience are. The other thing to think about at this point is whether you can use your own social media channels rather than starting up a new one for your show. Sometimes it's not possible, and I've got an episode around social media and whether you should think about doing something specific for your show or using your own personal profile. The problem mostly is when there's a clash between your personal stuff and your brand. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to mix those two things. So think about it. But if you can use your personal profile, it's always going to be better to start from a number. Even if it's 5, it's better than 0 rather than starting from scratch. And if you think about it, in the early days when you are starting a podcast and you don't have a following, don't be embarrassed about sharing it with your friends and family, because those are going to be your listeners for a while. So you want to milk your friends and family, and if they're following you on social media, then tweet, Facebook, Instagram the crap out of it and get them to be the first ones on board your show, because they can contribute significantly in the early days to downloads. They're the ones that are probably going to write reviews and rate your show because they've got so much buy-in to who you are. So don't underestimate the power of people you know. It's also a good exercise to sometimes write a list or a spreadsheet of all of the people that you know in all aspects of your life and blast out an email to them all. People love to know when you've started a new new creative endeavor, especially if it's brand new and it's a passion you've been wanting to do, and people will want to support you. And you don't need to start off with randos that don't know you. You can get a really decent following of people who enjoy your content from the people you know and love already. So don't be embarrassed to ask them. Don't be ashamed to send out an email. It's often the people that will start that momentum for you on your show are the people that know you and love you. The podcast directories, this seems like a simple one because everybody assumes that when you have a podcast, you're immediately in the podcast directories, but you have to submit to all of the podcast directories. So that's something that you definitely want to do just generally, but certainly when you have no following, you might not know that that's the process and the step that needs to be taken. Of course, if you listen to this show, you will know that, but that's really essential that you submit your podcast to every single directory so that people can really find your show and you can turn up where they are. The other really powerful thing is podcast SEO. So understanding keywords and optimizing your content for keywords. You can check out an episode back in the feed around podcast SEO, especially on your website, on your show notes page. This is so important because this is a way that people can come in through Google. They can also come into your podcast through Google. Now, Google is displaying playable search results. So they will pop up an episode or a show that relates to the keyword that you're searching for. And if you've got your SEO right, you can pop up in front of people that might never have found you before. And they might not even know what a podcast is. They might not even think they have a podcast app, but they know how to Google, and there you are in their Google search results. So that is a great way to get your show in front of new people. And to do that, you have to be thinking about your SEO. Also, make sure you are sharing your show with a universal link. Again, plenty of episodes in this show around all this stuff, but I've got an episode specifically dedicated to that. But this is basically making sure that you are sending out your podcast episodes using a link that works for both Android phones and iPhones. So if you are sending your Apple Podcast link only, nobody on an Android can click into that. And there are much more Android users in the world than there are iPhone users. So you don't want to be cutting out that portion of the population. So make sure that you are sharing a link that everybody can use so you're not missing out on any opportunities for new people. The last couple of points I would say, first up, turn the heck up for your audience. You know, if you don't have many people in the early days, make sure you are there for them in a massive way and that you are creating a show they love, that you are connecting with them, because that word of mouth is going to be invaluable for you to spread your show to new people, and sharing a show that way is still a really powerful way to build an audience. And finally, just be patient. I know it's so hard. I know we all want things to just happen immediately and we don't want to wait for anything, and instant gratification is the way of the modern world. But good things come with patience, and it can take a long time. But if you have that passion for the project and you know it's something you want to do and you know it's something that serves an audience, then stick with it and people will come. Having no following is no problem. It's no problem. You can build your show and make it a success. You just need to do a bunch of different things, put the work in, have the patience, and understand that it does take time to achieve, but you will get there eventually, I promise. Next week, as I mentioned, will be the final episode for this year of this podcast. So sad. I will miss you, but I'll be back next year with heaps more content, of course, and there is plenty to go through, as I mentioned. And if you want to head to podschool.com.au, you can join the waitlist for my online podcasting course, and you will get an email as soon as the course is opened, as well as weekly tips from me around podcasting. Thanks so much for listening. I will see you next week for the final episode of 2020 for Podschool.
That's all for today.